Okay, so welcome to, I don't know what to call it, but let's call it design talk or design criticism. I don't really mean this to criticize, so to be clear here, the disclaimer first of all, I'll try to do this in one take, and I haven't really thought through this, so bear with me. And I might criticize a lot here, but I'm not really trying to say the end of this is bad or like the game is bad or anything like that. I'm just thinking it's awesome that these developers released this design document, and I hope that is something that more developers can do in the future, because I think there's a lot of learn from it. But I think to learn even more from it, it's good to see it with a critical eye and to analyze. And I think that other designers could bring a lot more to it by analyzing and going through these kind of documents. I would be really happy to hear other designers' thought on this document as well. So I'm not doing this for another reason than I'm thinking this is interesting, and I'm really hoping others do it too as well. Really, I don't think that will be the case, because I think it's pretty uncommon. But yeah, I'm hoping for it. So what I'm trying to do is really just go into this and show my opinion as a game designer, and I'm trying to analyze it. And I know it's much easier to be critical of someone else's work than actually noticing it when you're actually doing it on your own work. So I'm not saying that if I did this document it would be so much better or anything. I'm just going into this trying to provide my opinion and hopefully create something that can be useful for others. Maybe for the one who has made the document wants to hear other designers' opinions. If not, then it's for other designers or wannabe game designers in the future that wants to hear this kind of talk. So I just found this document online, and I got linked by one of the designers in our team. And then I talked a little bit about it when I started reading a little bit into the document on the chat. And I noticed a few things that I started to rant a little bit about. And then I thought, well, let's try this instead. So I don't bother the chat too much. And yeah, it might be interesting. So I hadn't played the game. And maybe I'll try to later. But I think it's interesting to go through the document actually not knowing. I haven't read far in it so far, and I don't know the end result. I don't know the game, but it's interesting to see what kind of picture I get of the game from reading the document and then comparing that to what the game actually is. So yeah, that's my kind of view on it. And I'm not saying that the game would be better or anything from these changes. These guys know how to make good games. Apparently, like their game is much more successful than our game is by far. So yeah, don't take it like I'm trying to teach them something or anything. Okay, so with all that lengthy explanation and disclaimer over with, let's get into the actual documents. And I won't be reading much aloud because, first of all, I'm a bit slow reader, and I don't want this video to be too long. It would probably be long, but it would be even longer if I try to read it aloud. I just read through it, and I'll try to cut out probably the parts where I'm just reading. I'll see. I don't want to be too much editing work. I'm pretty busy with design and such as well. So, but yeah, I'll read it through and then take up the talking points I find while reading. So this is half like a live stream format, maybe. First, I read this introduction, and I think it's really, really good to explaining the background of the document. Though I still don't really know the background of the document, and that's probably the first thing I need to take up. Like, when you're making a design document, is this design document really made for production? Is this really made to help the team and the other the team, the artists, the designers, everyone working on the game, is this really meant for them, or is this just meant as the Kickstarter backers like document it, more explaining what the game actually ended up as than rather explaining something that helps with the production? And normally the design document is made for the design of the game. It's not made for an audience. It's made for the developers, or it's made for potentially publishers or people that are to invest in the project. So I will approach it from that perspective. I understand that might not be what this document is, because when I started reading it a bit, I got the sense that this is not a document meant for production, and that's also part of why I want to criticize, like go through the document, because if other game designers read this document, like or startup game designers read the document and think, oh, this is how you should write a design document, this is a successful game, so this is how you should write it. And I think that's healthy to then look at it closer and maybe see parts where it's not the greatest. So, for production, that is. So yeah, it's the name list and the content, and it's pretty long document to see, but design documents tend to be pretty long because there's a lot of like titles and like images and such. So I don't know how long this will really be to read through. It might be many parts, or I might just do the first part. I've only gotten to weapon mechanics when I started reading before. So this is probably the most standard thing to have first, and it's great to have like an overview of the game, first going through lightly what the game, what goals you have with the game, and then like for me, when I design things, I always go goal oriented, because I think the actual design, there's many designs that can fulfill one goal, and the important thing is usually the goal. So if there is many designs that are working to different goals, and the goals are important, but then the designs start to conflict, then you can always look at, okay, what is the actual goal? How should we adjust the design to work together instead? Like the design can change. The goal is what is important. So I totally agree that this should be the first thing in the document if it's for actual production. If you're selling this to someone, maybe a short introduction of like the actual what makes the game unique, because for me the goals are more for design. This is not actually meant for like a publisher or someone, in my opinion, depending on how design oriented the publisher is. If they're really into the game design, maybe they want to see the goals first, but anyway. So I'm guessing that is more the use stories. I won't get into that too much. Okay, well, by the way, sorry if the sound is weird. Like I have my mouse on the same desk where I have the mic, so there might be some sound you pick up from that. This is not a professional setup anyway. So in general, let's just check this. I remember there was a few of these that I thought, this starts to feel like something written after the actual game was designed, rather than something that is meant to be used for designing the game. I'll see if I can find what it was I've catched on to. Like for me, this is neat. Like, sure, you can say this, but of course you're trying to get the best possible UX. So for me, this is like a non-goal in some way. Like, yeah. If you're saying this, why are you not saying the same thing for art or design of the game or sound or anything? Is it really as the UX, or where is the line between UX then? Like, are you actually calling art and everything UX? Because there is some people that see everything in the game as UX. So then why do you specify UX? Are you saying that everything? Anyway, I think it's a bit silly. Sorry if I shouldn't blow into the mic. I should probably bring it a bit closer under me. Okay. So yeah, this is really good to know. When you read this early on in the game, you know, okay, so this is the kind of game we're creating. And this is very good for, like, this is of course something you want. If your game don't have this, it can get very obscure, and the people who wants to play a game where you don't understand what you did wrong, I think it's very few. But it's good to make a point of this, because it's very important, and it can be overlooked in design otherwise. Yes, yeah, it shouldn't be anyway, but I think it's good to have it there. Yeah, this is good. I am not sure if old school mentality really means that it took itself less serious, but hey, I understand what you're going for. So, yeah, this is good. Like there are games that try to be realistic, and there are games that do not try to. So it's good to say which one you are, to what degree. Yeah, and this is also good. You say you prioritize making the game feel good over art, and there is a lot of ways, especially in animation, where art can, if you focus too much on art, it means that the game gets more slow, because it is impossible to make fully realistic animation and keep the game responsive. It's like always a trade-off. So this is good to explain to everyone. So yeah, I think all these goals are actually good. It's probably the user stories that I start picking up more. Okay, so these are clearly written as something a player would say. So they're imagining something. Okay, so a player would say this. So I think this is actually good. It's telling that you're not trying to hide it in a way, that it's a mix of new sensibilities and like old school gameplay. And this is also very good. Like you're essentially saying that you're not trying to be too different. You want it to feel familiar, and you want it to be easy to pick up for players that are used to other games. So when, like, if there ever a design decision, what should we do here? And there are arguments on both sides, and yes, you could just look at this and say, okay, so what are players most likely to be used to from before? Even if it's a bit obscure mechanic, like, why do you really press this button to do this? It doesn't make sense. Or like, it's with more sense if like this is with the up button, or like jumping on, let's say, an Xbox controller. Why? That's the uppermost button, so it's more logical. If you say that, like, oh, the camera, okay, it might be more. I don't know what's up with camera, but it might be logical in some sense. But what you're saying here is that if most games jump with A, you should jump with A unless there is something very special you're trying to do. And I think to be clear with that from the start, it's good. And this is just saying that it should be very deep. So this part I feel is a little bit too specific. Like, what is the real goal here you're trying to achieve here? Why do you want this mechanic? Like, I understand you might. Is it probably to make it less punishing for players, or like, what is the goal here? Is it to encourage co-op? Maybe it is. Maybe it's both of those, and that's what led you to this design. So maybe they go into that deeper later on. But for me, if I'm getting into this document for production, I want to know what the goal of the game is, and this wasn't brought up in the goals. And there's always a limit of how much detail you can go into at once. But for me, when they bring this up, it's like, okay, is the goal that they shouldn't die immediately? Like, the goal should be something more tangible. I can only guess on the goals they had right now from reading this. I don't know the goals. I can guess that they don't want to be too punishing. I can guess they want to encourage team play. But if they said that those were the goal, we want it to be less punishing and we want to encourage team play. If those were the goals, you could have a lot of different design, or like iterate on that and find different design that could achieve the same goal in maybe more creative and more in a way that would suit other mechanics as well. But stating like this, then it's pretty much predetermined, like from here, like, okay, this mechanic is important for the game. It's like what makes the game, which I don't fully agree with, probably. And this is exactly the same as well, like long jumps and wall hops, okay. So you're clearly stating that you want there to be new options to try out in the map later on. So like having a map that is interesting to play over and over and finding new ways to use it in combat, that is really the goal. Long jump and wall hops is a mean to achieve that goal. And by writing this into the like overview of the core gameplay design, you're nailing this down. So this is what makes me feel like this is not meant for production. This is meant for describing the game post-launch, after the fact. Because I would not recommend you to write down these kind of mechanics. You can have ideas for them, and you can write them down after, but the thing you should be most clear about is the goal. Why do you have these mechanics? Like, what is the purpose? Because if these mechanics are fulfilling a very specific purpose, but they're not doing anything else, but there could be another mechanic that is fulfilling another goal as well that also fulfill that purpose, that would be more clean design, and it would be less add like unnecessary complexity. If you want the complexity, that should be a goal as well. Like they are indirectly saying that they want some kind of complexity because they want depth that you can get better and better at. So anyway, I think these two statements are not good, or they could be a lot better, and they make me feel like this is made after the fact, or like the designer had a specific game in mind and they just tried to come up with goals that fulfill that design instead of having a design and a feeling in mind and then writing goals and later coming up with a design. So this feels like what they described above here. And for me, user stories feels like they should be in reinforcement of the goals, but I don't feel like these really are. And there are things mentioned here that I don't feel like the goals covered, so not the greatest in my opinion. But it's really hard to make this, and it's something that will likely be updated throughout the game. But when I write these kind of things, and why I make it goal-oriented is because I want it to not change. For me, I write the goals in a way that is so working towards the real goal that is not likely to change. I'm not writing the actual detailed design here. So for me, to change the goal during development would be a pretty big thing. It would be something have happened that proved that something in the game was flawed, or like fundamentally flawed, and or something outside the game happens, so we need to like pivot the design in another direction that to make it more suitable, or like less like another game or something. Like, yeah, I don't try to do that in general because if I have a design for a game, I really want to make the design, but you have to be professional in some way as well. So far it hasn't happened to us, so yeah, I try to keep an open mind for that. So yeah, let's go on. Weapon mechanics. So it's always difficult writing a design document. So many parts are depending on each other, but you need to write as document, and there has to be an order to something. So it's really hard. Like after overview, what is the next thing you go into? For me, I usually go into like the overarching design of the game. What is the gameplay loop? Like, do you start a match roughly how many players, what is the goal of the match, how long time, and what happens between matches, and so on. Rough overview of that, so I know what the role of the weapons are before I actually start reading about the weapons. Because if you saw me go into this blind in some way, I have read about combat and such, so I understand there will be weapons, but yeah, I think it's better to describe the bigger picture first. Anyway, that's how I write, but there is no inherently wrong with going into weapons, because it's impossible to make a perfect order of these things, and maybe the weapons are the best to go first. Good. Okay, so I know this is yeah. So this is good to say, like you're focusing on movement, and just standing still and being good at shooting should not be optimal. Moving and shooting should be best. So I think this is good, and it's probably the first thing you should mention about the weapons. So there's another one I don't really like, or rather, yeah, both of these. So time to react is good to bring up, because I understand that for some reason they want to give players time to react. They want players to not die too quickly so they can react. Like they want to encourage people to play too much with positioning and surprising and camping, probably. But you hear what I say, probably. I can only, from reading this, I can only guess of the reason why they want higher time to react. Why do you want players to die slower, like compared to other games? So they want to give an advantage, but not too big advantage to positioning. With other words, movement, I can almost see it as, and movement, it said want it to be good. So if I really try to think about it, maybe they are meaning that getting in position and surprising a player should not be good. What they want to be good is like actually dodging and staying mobile while shooting. But if that is actually what they are going for, I want to know that if I were designing this. And like, is this really the only way to achieve this goal? Is very like, this is like a solution to the problem, a suggestion for me. But you should state the problem first you're solving with this. Like if you know the goal, you can know when you can break this. Like, when can you have a short time to kill? Can you have that at all? What is the reason for this design? I bet because this document seemed to be done after the fact and not for production, I guess that criticism will be the most common. So if it just goes down to I start reading more and more and more, and everything is just the same, I'll probably just skip over that part. But we'll see. I haven't read further than weapon accuracy. I didn't even read Iron Sight fully before. So in this way of writing, due to the fast-paced movement, the weapon needs to be very accurate to hit anyone. Okay, so they mean because you're moving fast, the weapons need to be accurate. But what they're really trying to say, I think, is that to encourage people to play fast or enable players to move fast in combat, the weapons need to be accurate. So that's a big difference, really. You like in this case, it almost sounds like the fast-paced movement can almost seem like a side effect or a problem for the weapons. But in fact, what they're trying to do is say that the weapons need to be this way to encourage this kind of gameplay, because this is the goal. And it's not written that way. So like this is very good to note in the design, because it's pretty common in games with like a recoil system that the first bullet is always 100% accurate to encourage you to aim and like more skill in aiming. But I don't like where or how it's written, really. Like this is separate from this. I feel like this is like just like a description on how recoil and accuracy work over time. Like, yeah. So I guess this could fit into this, but for me it gets a bit like it feels like two different areas get mixed in here, because, but yeah, I think if you just reformulate this a little bit, it would be fine. But yeah, these things are very good design. Yes, you know, if you're designing a shooter and you didn't know that for some reason, because like I've seen games released without this, and then later it gets added because players really want it to. You want there to be skill in aiming, you want there to be skill in recoil management and spread and distance and bursts and everything like that, but you still want that first accuracy in most cases. Like they also say, almost all cases. Anyway, that's a tangent. Like we were not really here to talk about such design. We're talking more about writing documents. It's good to acknowledge. I want to see if they say this. I want to see them also say something about how, like, why, like, again, but I think the why is here is that it's harder to move if you have iron sight, because it will take up more of the screen and it will zoom in, making you see less of the environment and be harder with movement. Or like, why are they trying to remove this? So yeah, so this again, this is just implementation details, not really the why. So if a designer say this and this is a decision, and you bring that to a programmer, there is a little bit of interpretation happening, I would say. But the only thing you pretty much feel like you can doing, okay, so the iron sights should zoom in, but not really, because if you're zooming in, it feels like you're giving an advantage maybe, or it shouldn't affect spread in any way, is my interpretation of this. And yeah, it shouldn't affect mouse sensitivity too much, maybe. I don't know. It's like, it feels like it's sometimes like you say that iron sight should be superficial because players are used to it. So yeah, so the goal here is to make people expect it to have it, but not really. Oh, sorry, I don't know if my Skype sound is picking up here. I probably need to take a break here soon. So yeah, but I'll yeah, anyway, I'll probably cut this out. Weapon feel. Sorry, I read extra slow when I'm trying to really think through this. So I'm not really just getting through it. I'm trying to really understand what I'm saying. So So you're trying to say here that you don't want weapons to be like modern weapons. Do you mean modern weapons in real life, or do you mean like in modern games? I'm guessing you mean modern weapons in real life. No, we must change the things in the look and feel. Well, I'm not really sure what you're going at here. Change from what? Like, okay, this one. Okay, so you mean compared to old school games, you want them to feel more like modern weapons. So you want the old school style of weapons, but you want to feel them to feel more modern. Is this the goal here you're talking about first? Then here's a suggestion to how to achieve that, right? Yeah. So I think the wording is not best. It's for me at least. I needed to really think through. It's relating to a goal you said in the beginning. But yes, I think the goal should be clear when you read this as well. Merc differentiators. I'm not really sure what they mean here. Like I'm reading the document, I don't know the game, like I said from the beginning, which I feel is part of the point. Like if you're going into this to design, you should learn to know the game from the document. So I'm not really sure what they are meaning here. Okay, selling points. Okay, so they mean the selling point of the game. So when they say merc, they're meaning for like selling. So they mean weapon variation. Since the introduction of additional weapons will be one of our strongest selling points. Right. Additional, so do you mean post-launch? No, you mean new kind of weapons that are different from other games. I assume you mean is your strongest selling point. So yeah, that's pretty standard. Yeah, I did something. Yeah. So what this is really saying is that weapons will be a strong selling point of the game. So making them feel new and distinct from each other and from other games is really important. That is really what you're trying to say here. I just feel it's strangely worded. So how long has this video been so far? Oh, 30 minutes. I'm so sorry. This is so slow. I'm probably trying to I'm yeah. So maybe I'll continue like this a little bit more. So I show you my process of going through this, because this is how I usually read design documents and how I view design. And then I'll probably stop the video, start taking notes on the most important talking points and pages and so on I want to talk about, and then make another video where I go through those points. If people are interested really in this, I am not sure, but yeah. Because I think there's a lot to learn from this kind of documentation. I'm not saying that our documentation, like I said before, is better. I'm just saying that I like if there are more concrete examples out there that we can discuss and talk about. Because design documents like this document even is saying, are kind of a dying breed. It's not really used that heavily in design, especially of smaller titles and smaller teams. It's more like a wiki or other things. Something that is easier to keep live. But I think that this kind of wording and how you structure things is still important, and this kind of document can still be important when you're trying to pitch it to someone. So anyway, side talking again. I'm not used to this kind of making videos like this. It might come through in here, but I hope I still provide something. Okay, so this is really getting into the details now of the weapons then. So this is good, like going over more the goals and like the more detailed goals, like a breakdown of. So the first goals in documents are for the whole game. This section is interpretation of those goals, what kind of goals and design the overarching weapon system have to achieve the goals of the whole game. And this is a detailed implementation. So for me, I think goals to secondary goals, no, not secondary goals, but a means to achieve those goals, and then detail is the best way to go. And it's kind of this here. I'm just missing the goal part in most of these. So this says a quick breakdown. I hope it's still meant to be a complete breakdown, or where is the complete breakdown meant to be? Maybe it's just in the designer's head and like live documentation, so to speak, in conversations. Anyway. Every other weapon accuracy. Well, for each of these stances, although most will simply use the default. Okay. These stances, okay, so they have a list of stances and they want all accuracy to be separate for all this, or have the potential to be separate for all of them. So, okay, so this makes me feel like, is the weapon deciding the switch time, or I thought it was a player's stance, but okay, so yeah. What happens to recoil when you're switching mid-firing or right after firing and then start firing again? Like, they haven't really gone into how recoil and spreading works for real yet. So for me, it feels like they should have mentioned that before going into stances, because how stances work with that will be hard to describe without knowing the recoil system. So like, this is almost like gibberish so far before I'm reading further into it. Like, of course, if we have a system like this, but how it actually works, it's hard to tell. I don't get a clear picture from this. Because I see so many other alternatives. It's not that I don't see one, it's just that I see so many, so I don't get a picture of which or how they really want it. Pretty much everything. So it's because iron sight is separate from these, it almost sounds like they mean you can't do these while using iron sight. Or is iron sight a modifier, but air plus iron sight is separate? So does this mean that moving like walking with iron sight is same as standing still with iron sight, or I'm not sure how to interpret this. Okay, so they use your so it is same to stand still and walk, and if you iron sight, you are limited to walking speed. For me, if I were just working on this game and I had read the goals above, this would feel strange to me. Why are you suddenly limiting movement speed? Didn't you say that you wanted people to move? Then why are you limiting movement speed in iron sight? Like, is it because it's hard to make it look good? But didn't you also say that it was more important to have the game feel good or responsive than have it look good? Or like, yeah. That might be a good reason here. Or might be some other thing they're trying to achieve with this that it's not clear from reading. So this is good to describe that what you want, like a kind of goal you want with iron sight. But then this is, for me, going against what you said before, but you said iron sight should not give an advantage. Or you more said you really give an advantage, but like for me this sounds like a really advantage. So for me it already feels like you're breaking your own goals with this design. So it might be because this is the document that was actually worked on and the goal changed and you didn't document it in some way. But yeah, for me this is not good. Okay, so this is good. Like this is telling you that every movement mode doesn't really need their own stances. They can use properties from other stances. But then this feels very like, instead shouldn't you describe this in a way that describe what effect it has on your accuracy or something, instead of describing an action? Because if it's a low straining action or like highly straining action or something that like, yeah, it might be easier this way. I don't know. Maybe during production it's easier to say, oh, let's make wall running like sprint, instead of like, oh, let's make wall running highly straining action or something. I don't have best word for it. I just came up with it right now. If you really think about it, you can probably find good words. Like this is probably unstable, like you don't have support or something, like, yeah. But yeah, that's not really about the documentation. That's just design things. So just ignore that. This is this is design documentation, and I think this is good to know. This is good to write here. Yeah, maybe if you want to explain why to designer that feels, oh, why can't I add one more for this? Maybe because you want it to be manageable to balance and to adjust, or like the number of data to access and such. If you mention that, it's probably easier to understand later on if you're considering adding one more, like, why are we not adding one more? Okay, so this is the reason. Then you can make a decision of, is it worth it or not? If you don't know the reason, you can never know, is it really worth it or not? Anyway. Okay, what? Okay, so you mean that in the transition you instantly move to the new, the state you're transiting to. You're not lerping or you're not keeping the old one. You're what? Okay, so. Fine, sure. So yeah, this is good. They're explaining why. I like the other order, other way around, but sure, yeah. There might be reason to do this because you want people who are not really designers that read this document to quickly get to the implementation details, and then you can go with this first and then explain why. So yeah, there are different reasonings. So I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's different from how I would do it. Okay. Yeah, but for me, wouldn't that be the same if you lerped them or something like that as well? Or am I misunderstanding the design here? I need to read further. So crowd stationary. Standing stationary, maybe? Okay. Max mean, okay, current. Oh, wait, let me know it. Okay, so you mean the current actual value of the spread should not be kept. You mean that the current value should be seen as a percentage between the current state, max and min, and then when you change state, you want the percentage to be kept and the actual value to change. Okay, so you're rather than keeping, okay, yeah. Maybe this is the best way to write it, but I don't know, because I misunderstood it when reading it first. Maybe it's because I'm concentrating, not fully concentrating, but yeah, it's good they had this graph to show this, because I wouldn't really design this design otherwise. And that's something that can be true for any design. It might be really hard to describe so everybody understands. So having art like this, or like drawings or like graphs and everything, is very important in design documents. So expect that to be part of design documents in general. So yeah, I understand the design now. And now I understand these goals. These goals make sense now than when you actually understand the design. So yeah, maybe it could be more polished, but yeah, I don't have a problem with this. Okay, Howard. So one thing I'm not sure I understand here, is the spread actually always a percentage value and calculated from these values, or because it's increasing? Yeah, in a way that's just implementation detail maybe. But not really, because, or like all states have the different values for this, right? All of these values are different for every state, if I assume correctly. Because otherwise you can shoot with a state with a long range of min and max, and then your accuracy go up very quickly. But then when you go over to state with slower recovery and shorter range, you would actually go down. So it's because it's percentage based. It feels like everything of this should always be percentage based in implementation. And I assume then the rate and increased recovery and everything should be in the 0 to 100 or 0 to 1 range. So this is a programmer value. I assume this is because someone didn't really understand it or something in the code, and they had a discussion and they just inserted this. I don't like how it's in the start like this. Okay, yeah, I don't fully understand this actually. So this is clearly trying to solve a very specific problem. I wish there was more information about this, but this is the detailed implementation. Okay, yeah. So this is fine as well. And they are specifically saying was fired. So you're not saying like, if you have, like, I think, for example, I think it's Battlefield, or there might be somewhere like that, but they are starting the recovery off the rate of fire has recovered first. So it's like, if you have 10 bullets per second, then there is a tenth of a second after you fired before the next bullet can be fired, and then is when the next bullet can be fired, the recoil recovery is actually starting. But in this case, it's when the bullet is actually fired, a delay starts, and then the recovery starts. So it's good, precise design in this case. I only don't understand this. But the other part is accurate enough for me to get a good picture of how I would implement this from a reading, so that's good. I just have to interpret the start with. So yeah, I want to continue with this. But yeah, I feel I'm running out of time, and I got a message I need to reply to as well. So I will cut the video short here, and I'll continue with this. If you actually want the long format of me going through the document and like saying everything I liked and didn't like or something, you can go this as well. But like you see you can probably get a taste from this that there are things here and there that I feel could be worded better, and some things I feel like are actually fighting the goals. That is for me pretty strange, and that should be cleared up, because maybe they are working with the goals in some way that is not clear from this document, or they are skipping talking about goals and just implementation details, or like things that can almost look arbitrary. But there are also really, really good things in here, and like, for example, this graph and like this description is good. I understand how it would be implemented from this. I don't understand this part only. But yeah. So yeah, and I bet it will continue like this in the document. There will be more and more. I see more art here, and this looks like really good things. They are talking about an old system, new system, and things. So it's good to document that as well, especially if you have designers or like leftover code and such that might assume one system or had assumed it and so on, and then you have a new one. It's all good. I'll get through it in time, but I probably just take notes and then go in on the things I really thought was really good, or the things I think have issues and such, because I think there is more to learn from the issues in most cases. But if there's a really good thing, I think that is good to bring up as well, especially if I think it's not standard. If I think it's something that is better than most, or better than, yeah. I hope you understand what I'm getting at. So yeah, in general, it's easy to learn from mistakes, and so I'll probably bring up most of the mistakes as long as it's not the same thing, and I try to bring up all the really good things as well. But it's hard to draw a line where it's good and what is good and what is really expected. Really, like if it's just as expected, I'm not sure I should bring it up, because this is not really a video made for just talking about what the design document should be and what is to be expected. This is more like going through the design document and bringing out, like, learning more and being better at just writing documents from seeing the really good and the not so good parts. Okay, so I'll get to that soon. And thanks for watching so far, and I hope you find it interesting. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, so you feel free to write comments, and I might reply directly in the comments, or I might take it up in the next video. Yeah. And if you have other design document you want me to look at, or anything like that, or questions about design, or maybe even a design document of your own, I don't, as long as it's not too much, I wouldn't mind taking a look. Just know that I might sound very critical. I'm not really saying things are bad, even in this case. So I'm just saying, yeah, I'm when it comes to design, I'm pretty critical. Okay, so that's all. Thank you, and see you around.